You joined the military at 17, right?
I did.
What was life like before that?
I was all over the world. My mom and my dad had split up when I was pretty young. My mom was in the US. She moved to the United States when I was like 5 or 6. And so my dad was in the UK. So I was going back and forth my whole life. It was kind of rough, in terms of just the flip-flopping between countries.
I hear you
So
for sure. What drew you to it
yeah.
initially? What was it that the appeal?
The to the military.
Yeah.
I think, I used to, when I was 13, I got my first job and I worked at a hair salon and it was in a like shopping center. And below the hair salon was a military recruiting office for the British Army. And they just looked so put together and, they had their uniforms on. They just seemed very stable and powerful and, all of the things that the military exudes. And
Hmm.
I wanted that, so for the next 3 years, it had just caught my attention consistently. And so when I was 16, I asked my dad, like, hey, can I join the British Army? And he was like, over my dead body. No daughter of mine's going to join it. And so I asked my mom instead in the US, and she said yes. So I joined the American Army.
I love that. What was plan B back then?
Plan B was probably going to be like hair because I had been working at the hair salon and I was just making cups of tea and scheduling appointments and stuff, but I was always so excited about like the next thing there, like, oh my gosh, I want to go to hair school and learn how to do hair myself. And so it's probably going to be that, but I'm so happy I didn't go down that route. I mean, for me it
Hmm.
was definitely the military it was destined to be.
Yeah, no, on your podcast you talk a lot about like transitioning back to into civilian life. But looking back over like your career, how you look back at it in general.
I'm so thankful for it because it really gave me like such a solid foundation in terms of like just being disciplined, looking at things bigger than myself, caring for others instead of just myself, leaving places better than I found it, which is it's the little stuff that you learn in the military. Because when I would go anywhere with my unit, we would always do like a cleaning exercise at the end of whatever we were doing, where we would go around the property and we would leave it better than we found it, which at the time was so annoying. I'm like, this guy left this trash the last time they were here. It's nothing to do with me. Why am I picking it up? And it's like those little life lessons where it's like, it doesn't matter that someone else left it that way.
Hmm.
I'm here now. I'm using this space now. I can leave it better than I found it now. And so that is something that I found annoying at the time when I was learning the lesson. But now it's like, I can't go anywhere without making sure to take a moment and like picking stuff up that's not even mine just to leave it better than I found it. So, I mean, it was such an amazing, lesson in life. I mean, I was there for 16 years in the military and, I left with so many incredible North Stars, like
Hmm.
directions that, kind of helped shape the person I am today. And I would not be this person without it. That's for sure.
Take me through those 16 years. What were your roles in the military?
Yeah, so my core MOSs, which is military occupational specialty for those not familiar with the acronym, is 42 Alpha and 79 Tango. So I have two kind of cores. My first is human resources, and my second is 79 Tango, which is recruiting and retention. But I did a lot more than that in the military when I was in for so long. So I did air assault, I was rappel master. I used to train soldiers coming in to the military brand new before they would go to basic training, kind of give them like what they call recruit sustainment program. It's like a good solid foundation of all the military rules, training, marching, making their beds. I mean, all the initial stuff that they need to
Sure.
be successful for when they go to basic training for the delayed entry folks. So yeah, just all kinds of stuff. I was over in Afghanistan for a couple of years. Went to Germany, Kuwait, Kyrgyzstan, just traveled all over the place and landed here back in the United States at some point. So
Hmm.
yeah,
Yeah, fun. Transitioning back, you left in 2022, right?
2022. Yeah, April 2022.
Tough 2 years, I can imagine. I talked to a lot of like military guys. I had a bunch of SEAL guys on. Um, I'm like, what's the toughest? What's the most defining point of your military career? They're all like the transitioning back. It's just because you have a way of living, right? That you I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it was the safety net. Like, I almost didn't get out. I almost just stayed in. After the 16 years, which a lot of people are like, I can't believe you're 4 years shy and you left. But the truth is, I was just so over it. And for me, the transition hard part was the safety net because in the military, you've got health insurance. It's not very good, but you've got it. You've got your brotherhood, your sisterhood. You've got a paycheck for the most part that's guaranteed. You've got a career track. You know what you're doing, and joining at 17, that's all I knew. life in the military was literally all I knew. I didn't know anything else. And so me leaving was the scariest decision of my life, taking that leap into the unknown of I don't know what's going to happen next. I don't know if I'm going to be okay, but I literally took that safety net away, and it was really scary. I mean, it was so anti-ceremonial too. There was just like there was no retirement ceremony. There was no like transition ceremony. It was just like the date came that my contract expired and I was out. There's nothing fancy about it, and so that was a really big step into the unknown. And although I'm really glad that I did leave, of course I miss it. There's commercials that come on. I'll see a Humvee drive down the highway here in Los Angeles. I'm like, oh man, like I kind of miss it. But at the same time, like it's not time for me anymore. It's time for me to move on. So I'm doing okay.
I hear you. I hear you. What was the main tipping point though? Like I'm sure there was a period where you were like, I'm gonna be in, I'm gonna be out. What was the main point that drew you of the fence?
Yeah, I was going through OCS and officer candidate school, and I was home on a break, and right around that time, Biden was pulling out of Afghanistan, and I just hated the way he pulled out. I mean, I spent a good chunk of my life there and sacrificed so much there and worked with a lot of different, people in the country. And the way that he pulled out really was upsetting for me, if I'm honest. And it just seemed like it was such a waste of my time, but not just my time, everybody, like all the soldiers that have sacrificed their families, their loved ones that have given their lives, that, ended up taking their own lives around the traumas and the mental health issues they picked up while serving in those war zones, just everything. For me, it just seemed like it was all for nothing. And I had this complex of just like, I felt like a pawn, and the role that I was going to go into as an officer, I didn't want to do that role anymore, where I was going to go be one of the first females to lead infantry troops. And I just didn't want to do that anymore. I'm like, I don't want to take young men and some women into those types of situations for nothing, So it was a little bit of a political thing for me. That was the tipping point. But there's other things at play too. I just realized it wasn't making me happy anymore. For me, being in the military, I was always chasing the next thing. Like as an example, when I went to air assault school, that was like for a lot of people listening, a lot of other soldiers and stuff. They're probably like, "Oh, that's easy." Not for me. Like going to air assault school, I was a girl. They didn't want to send me, and so I had asked for like 8 years to go. I finally got to go. And the reason why I'm telling you this is like for me, it was always like a competition.
Sure.
Like being in the military was always like, I can do this. I'm like proving something to myself. I'm proving, that I can do it. I'm proving I'm the best. I went into all of these different specialties outside of my MOS, and took on these roles outside of my MOS to prove a point. And I'm like, who am I proving the point to? Like, I know I can do it now. So I don't need to prove it to myself anymore. And I don't need to prove it to anyone else. Like, I've gotten awards at this point for being the first in a lot of situations as a woman. And so I don't need to do that anymore. And so for me, it was kind of like this conundrum of who am I? Why am I doing this? What am I doing it for? It was just like this crossroad in my life where it was just time to move on, time to do something else.
Yeah, sure. There's no like 6 week course that put you through when you get out. Like, for example, I don't know. How did they do it?
No, no, that's a good idea though. I'm gonna put that one on the whiteboard.
Yeah,
No, that there is no course. They do have some sort of like transition programs that exist, but they're not great. It almost feels like another admin task that you have to go do. For those of you listening that have been in the military, you'll totally get this, but like almost everything you do in the military, you're standing in a line and you have a folder with your paperwork in. And like, as an example, if you're deploying, you go from station to station to station to station. And it's like that when you get out, you're just like, you're holding a folder, you go from station to station to station to station. And it's like, you're doing your medical, you're filling out paperwork, you're turning in your gear and your equipment, right? You're going to all these stations and then you're out, and that's it. And it's like, they do have really wonderful people that want to help with career or getting your resume right or getting you enrolled in the VA system or whatever. They're lovely. And they do their best, but it's just like when you're at that point, you're kind of just like, get away from me. Like, I just need a break. I need a
sure.
break from the military stuff. Yeah. So It was not, it was anti, I don't even know what the word is, but it wasn't, there was no ceremony around it. It
No,
was
I
just
get it.
like, you're out. So yeah.
Yeah, for sure. What do you think, like from your perspective, why it's so tough to transition back for a lot of people?
I mean, just with babes, I can only speak from my experience, obviously, but and from the people that I've talked to, it's the safety net is gone, and within the military, it's an entire ecosystem of its own. So you've got you'll hear me bring up several acronyms already in this conversation alone, but like in the military, we've got our own language. We have our own way of interacting with each other. That safety net that exists where it's kind of like you're guaranteed, like as long as you're on a contract and your behavior is good, you're kind of guaranteed in the job that you have, and you're guaranteed that paycheck, and where you're going, what you're doing, what you're going to wear, who you're going to be with. Everything is known, right? There's no unknown. And so when you leave the military, you step into the unknown. You have no idea what you're going to wear. You've got to start picking out your outfits. You have no idea where your next meal is coming from. You don't know where your next paycheck's coming from. You got to go get a job. Now you have to actually convince people to like you, to hire you, because in the military it's like you enter with a job, and it doesn't really matter if people like you or not, unless you're playing the political game to get promoted. But if you don't care, then it doesn't matter if people like you or not. You can just be yourself. But in the civilian side, you've got to play the politics game. You got to convince people to like you. You got to schmooze your boss. Like it's just so different, and you have to be a different type of person. You have to learn a new language, and like people have no idea what you're talking about when you say certain terms and phrases, right? So it's just, you really are stepping into the unknown, and it's scary. And that is why that's part of the reason why we see such a high rate of military men and women ending their lives, because it's too much. The transition is so difficult, and you lose the brotherhood and the sisterhood, especially if you're moving out of the area that you used to serve. And so, you go home to your families, and you're not the same anymore, and you look around and you realize like how tough life is. I mean, it's a different beast.
Yeah, I believe you posted somewhere that like not just military, but like first responders, more cops like lose their life because of suicide than in line of duty. That's something though.
Yeah. Yeah, so I feel terrible not knowing the statistic right off the top of my head, but the military men and women obviously have a high rate of suicide, but so do first responders. Yeah, first responders are seeing traumatic events every single day, and
Yeah.
so I argue that not just argue, but I think this is based on data, that first responders actually have a higher rate of ending their lives than even some of the military men and women do, because they're in the line of duty every single day. They are, on some shifts they're spending 80% of their shift in traumatic situations, right? They're going from one traumatic situation to another. And so they've got a lot more exposure to trauma and things like that. So to your point, I'm now on the board of a great organization called Illuminating Co., which is based in Austin, Texas, and it's supporting military men and women, but also first responders with their mental health.
Yeah. What was your strategy for the past 2 years? How did you approach it?
I didn't really have one initially, and then I got one because I was going south really quickly
Right.
mentally. I When I first got out, I really struggled. I got out because I was struggling, where I was just kind of like at war inside myself, but also at war with like what to do with my life, and like if this is what I really wanted to do. And so when I transitioned out, I nosedived for probably the first year. I was just struggling hard. I didn't like where I was living. I didn't like what I was doing. I went from military to fashion. So I did this completely crazy 180-degree pivot from wearing boots and hauling around an M4. And, I was a leader. So, it's like, yelling at people and, just like kind of being this tough warrior to, working in human resources in the fashion industry. And that is a trip. So again, going back to like having to convince people to like you and play the political game and like, oh my God, I love your purse, just like that kind of stuff. It's not me. And so that was a really difficult transition for me. And I had a hard time. I ended up getting myself on SSRI medications to help with mental health. And when I hit rock bottom, I was also contemplating ending my life. And at that point, that was a big transition for me to realize realize like this is not working. I need to do something. And what I found I was really missing was purpose and community. And so I started surrounding myself with really amazing individuals that were like-minded, that had been former military themselves or first responders. I sought out other alternative modalities for healing. Outside of SSRI medications and talk therapy because that wasn't working for me, and it doesn't work for so many soldiers and service members. So I found these incredible solutions to all of those issues. I found purpose, and my purpose now is in helping other military veterans transition, which I find so much joy in because I know what it's like and I know how tough it is. Now my whole focus is on mental health, and I've just found these incredible communities and services and alternative healing modalities like plant medicine that really get to the core of the issue and help everyone out. So that's what I'm doing now.
Yeah, I love that. Obviously, share as much as you feel comfortable sharing. What's it like when you contemplate taking your own life? I've never been there. What's that like?
Yeah, it's obviously probably different for every single person, but for me, in my own journey, for me it was I lost my purpose, I lost my sense of worth, I lost direction, I lost community. I didn't have any North Star anymore about where I was going and what I was doing. I was extremely lost. And I had made the leap from Portland, Oregon down to Los Angeles, which is so funny because I feel like the city of Los Angeles is where people go when they're trying to be somebody and they're trying to make themselves something. And that's kind of what I did. But Los Angeles is the last place you should go if you're lost. You can just easily get sucked into the worst of the worst of the worst down here. And that's kind of what happened to me for a little bit there. And, I found myself in situations I shouldn't have been in, with people I shouldn't have been with, and just started going down the wrong track. And so that all played a role in the story of how Amy got lost. And it's like I woke up one day and I realized there was nothing about my life I liked. There was nothing about myself that I appreciated. I was so far from being this warrior who had earned her air assault wings and was one of the first females in the history of the Oregon Army National Guard to like become a rappel master. Like I wasn't that person anymore. I was like, what am I doing? Who am I with? Like, why am I in this situation? And I really went down a negative spiral of just worthlessness, where I thought I was going to be better off not being around, and that would fix the narrative in my brain of worthlessness. I was not kind to myself. I would stand in the mirror, and being here in Los Angeles, it's a tough market for women. I mean, girls, if you're not wealthy, I mean, like, you got to have your hair, makeup, nails, all the fashion labels. You got to be skinny. You got to be in the know, you got to be a socialite, right? It's all of this like hyper competitiveness, flashiness, showing off. And that wasn't me. I was the girl who was eating MREs in a field, plotting my points just a few months prior, like with cows and like in the middle of the night with my night vision, trying to like figure out which direction I was going. And yet here I was now in Los Angeles trying to wear Louis Vuitton, And so I was so out of my comfort zone, and I didn't know where I was going and what I was doing. And so I hit rock bottom. I had been through so much negatively, but also positively, but so much negatively in the military that I didn't deal with. I had been I hate this word, but like a quote unquote victim of sexual assault. I had, unresolved traumas from my time overseas. I mean, I had a lot that I had just not dealt with. And I had just like gone from that comfort zone to absolute wildness where there was no support. There was no safety net. I had no one to talk to. And so for me, it was, I literally woke up one morning and I was just like, I just don't want to be here anymore. I don't want to do this anymore. I'm so lost and I feel like I don't have a lifeline. And, my family, as I mentioned earlier in our conversation, they live over in the UK. And so I didn't have anybody here for me. And yeah, so I just got to the point where I was like, that's it, I'm done. And thank God that didn't work out because here I am. But and I have this a beautiful, hero story of just being my own hero and saving myself that I can now help others overcome that pit too when they hit that rock bottom. But yeah.
Yeah, no, for
Sucks.
sure, for sure. A couple of weeks back, I was talking to Nick Lavery. He had his leg blown off in a field, And we were talking about like like obviously him being he's like a big dude, and his leg being blown off, like his most of his like sense of self was like based on his athletic capabilities, right? And like coming out of that, what's that been like for you? Like basing your sense of self on something. Have you done that? Struggled with that? Done
Yeah.
that?
Yeah, if you knew me when I was in the National Guard in Oregon, you knew that I was the girl who was always trying to compete in the best warrior competitions. You knew that I was the person who was always trying to go to the tough schools, and I wanted to be the first female infantry officer right when that change was made in 2016, where women could go in to that particular field. Like I wanted to be the first. I wanted to be extremely competitive. I was extremely athletic. Always maxing my PT test, everything, and losing that purpose, where for me, my purpose was competition. My purpose was proving that women can do it too, proving that I could do it. I sought validation. This is probably extremely unhealthy, which I'm understanding now as I go through my healing journey. But I sought validation from others, telling me that it was awesome that I did something or I accomplished something, right? And so when I didn't have that anymore, and now I was just a regular schmo on the street, I was just a regular person trying to get a corporate job and get a promotion just like everybody else, right? Playing the political game. And I was no one special. And, I wasn't doing anything cool or hard or difficult. And there was no ceremony. No one's putting wings on my chest after air assault school, right? Like losing all of that was a huge wake up call for me about just how difficult life is outside the military and how many other factors are at play when you don't have everything prescribed to you by the military. And my journey into finding myself again, providing my own purpose, healing myself, that was one of the hardest mountains to climb. And even though there's no ceremony, like I've never been so proud of myself in my life. So for me, it was a good thing, that I've been able to overcome that. Probably very obviously didn't lose a limb. That's a whole different category of honor and sacrifice and things that I don't relate to at all. That I'm just so thankful for their sacrifice and so sorry that happened to people like that, because that happens to a lot of people, to lose limbs and things like that and have even worse injuries and worse scenarios that they go through in the military. But for me, it was just a war with my own mind, that I had to overcome.
Did you find that the stigma around mental health changed during your career, or it's still not where you want it to be?
Yeah, I think it has changed somewhat, but we're definitely getting better about it for sure. There's a few things that really need to shift and need to shift quickly, though. There's still this horrible thing online where, God forbid, I'm actually so curious how the comments are going to go on your show and any show that I go on to when I talk about mental health as a woman in the military, because there's such a horrific response usually from the internet trolls where they'll be like, women shouldn't even be in the military, let alone have mental health issues, and this is why women shouldn't go in the military, is because they're not capable of being strong enough, right? Like we know men go in the military, and we know men are probably going to come away from the military with some sort of thing that they need to overcome in some cases, right? But God forbid it happens to a woman, right? I'm already dealing with people saying women shouldn't even be in the military, so I'm already dealing with that battle, right? Of like, oh man, do I not belong? Like, is my service not valuable? Is my efforts and my inputs not worth anything, right? And then on top of that, if I now say, oh my gosh, like I had a hard time in the military, or I was sexually assaulted, or any of those things, now I'm also on top of the stigma of, God forbid, a woman be in the military. Now also, like, if I complain about anything I picked up while I'm in the military, see, I told you women shouldn't be in the military. So for me, it's this vicious loop of combating that kind of stigma from those people, which, by the way, usually it's people that couldn't join the military that typically will be the ones making those comments. So I don't take them too personally, but that's something I dealt with. Absolutely. It's something I deal with now. Anytime I do a show or anything like that, people will make some comments about women in the military particularly, but also mental health in the military. But also it can ruin your career. They'll take you off duty in certain situations. They'll not send you on deployment deployments. They'll, mess with your career track. If you dare to say I have a mental health issue, that's a problem. They need to do something different on that front. Maybe not stop people's careers or pause their service or whatever. But the other thing is how we treat mental health issues. I've done so much work now at this point with entheogens, plant medicine, that actually gets to the root cause of issues. And so right now we're on the forefront with great organizations like Illuminating Collective, Heroic Hearts, et cetera, that are working towards providing access to plant medicines and alternative modalities for mental health treatment instead of just throwing bottles of Ambien and SSRI medications at service members, because that's what happens now. When I was over in Afghanistan, I said I had a mental health issue. I was struggling with something at the time, and they literally sent me down to the med station. I got a bottle of, I think it was like Zoloft or something thrown at me, literally, and a bottle of Ambien, which is sleep medication, which is addictive, by the way, and sent home. And when I went back to my duty the next day, I went into work and I was sitting at my computer, and I was drooling, and my chief of our unit turned around. She looked at me and she was like, "Are you drooling?" She's like, go home. Like, why are you drooling right now?" And I was literally like, just like my mind wasn't working right, because the medication was wrong for me. I was on way too much of it. And so they wrongly will give SSRIs like that, and create a whole other host of issues like addiction to sleep medications, as an example. So we're not treating mental health issues the way that actually heals them. We're just masking issues. So that's all. I mean, that's a whole nother conversation. But just the stigma, the issues that happen around these types of issues. It's just everyone's doing the best they can, but it's just not enough.
No, it's tough, right? To like fully understand someone when you're not in that position, and most people who are in that position can't like, sometimes not function and do those things. So it's like you say, you create like a vicious cycle out of it. It's tough.
Yeah.
You're in Austin, right? That's the Illuminating Project.
Yeah, so Illuminating Collective, yeah, it's a really wonderful nonprofit organization that focuses on mental health issues and healing them for veterans, first responders, firefighters, and they do really big, amazing 25-week programs for prep. A retreat that you go to for a week, and then an integration program after. It's 25 weeks long, and it saves so many lives. It's so beautiful. It helps get people off of other medications, puts them through a plant medicine entheogenic retreat. They learn breath work and all that kind of stuff. And then afterwards, there's a beautiful cohort group that they go. It's like a therapy group that they go through week over week virtually, and it helps a lot. So
Yeah, sure. The plant-based stuff. What's that like? I've never done
oh
that.
my gosh. Yeah. No, and so many people haven't. Our Western society has stripped it away from being part of our culture. But what's so beautiful about plant medicine and entheogens in general is it's actually the original medicine. This stuff has been around for hundreds of thousands of years, if not longer. I'm talking about mushrooms. I'm talking about frog medicine. If you're not familiar with like 5-MeO DMT, that's from the bufo frog. There's other types of frog medicine like Cambo. There's a ton of beautiful medicines. Anyway, each one is unique and different, and not everyone is a fit for it. But for those that are fit, the first step is just to get off of any existing medications that you're on, get clean of anything like alcohol, caffeine, et cetera. Just kind of prepare your body, and then you go to the retreat place and you work with licensed and well-practiced facilitators and providers. And this is in a legal, safe environment. You're given the medicine. So as an example, you might be served 6 or 7 grams of mushrooms. It's a lot of mushrooms. And you are in a very safe environment where you're with a facilitator and you basically journey for several hours on the medication and on the medicine, I should say. And then that is each medicine is different, but like for mushrooms, if we're using using that as an example. It's a very visual experience. And for a lot of people, I can only describe it this way. The mushrooms scan you and what you really need. It's unique for every person. For me, I dealt with a lot of like my first time sitting with it, I dealt with a lot of like mother issues and father issues. And like I went all the way back to childhood. There's actually a great series on Netflix that you can watch if you want to learn more about this called How to Change Your Mind. It's by Michael Pollock. There's also a book that accompanies it that gives you insight into what happens during these things. But it basically helps you go to the root cause of any issues that you have that are stored in your body and get them out. And then you, like for a lot of people, you don't end up ever having anxiety or depression anymore. So for me, I was extremely anxious all the time, deep anxiety, deep depression. And I came out of my plant medicine ceremony completely free of those things. And so I don't need medications anymore. I don't need sleep medications. I mean, nothing. It just completely healed me. But a big part of that is also integration. So it's not like you can just go sit with plant medicine one time and be healed. It's you're doing the work. Like you're changing what's going on in your life, the friend circles, you're stopping drinking alcohol. And, for a lot of people do drugs too, like they get off of drugs. They're getting sober, they're getting healthy, they're finding community, they're finding purpose, they're finding, new friend groups, they're getting mental health treatment, right? So there's a lot of factors that go into it, but it is a massive gateway tool to helping people truly heal.
I hear you. That's cool. What's your like main advice to people who like struggle with mental health in general? Like, how do you approach it from what all that you've been through?
Yeah. I mean, the first thing is just if I was just to go back to my old self almost 2 years ago, the first thing is just to sit with it, and just acknowledge you're not doing okay. And to say that to yourself, like, girl, you're not doing okay. Right. Or, like just admit it, just acknowledge it that, you've done analysis of your life and how you're feeling and that you're not doing okay. And it's okay not to be okay. Right. Which is so cliche to say, but it's so true. It is okay not to be okay. Life is a series of ups and downs, and you're right now just currently in a down. And the only way you can go up, go now is up, right? So once you establish kind of where you are, next define where you want to be, right? And that's sometimes getting just a piece of paper and writing out a list of where do I want to go? What do I want to do for a job? Where do I want to live? Who do I want my partner to be? Because maybe you have the wrong partner. There's a lot of factors involved in this work. So just privately do this work about, goal setting. Where do you want to be? And then figure out what it takes to get to all of those things. And if you can't even get past like your anxiety, which I'll give you an example, I couldn't even go from my home to the grocery store in the car without having a full-blown meltdown angrily, right? I was so angry in the car. I was that person honking, getting out of my car, yelling, right? Like I was having major anger problems. And that was a big sign for me, like, holy crap, like I'm in Los Angeles. I'm going to get stabbed if I'm not careful, right? Where I need to get my anger in check here and figure this out. So just admitting you have a problem. And once you kind of define that and where you want to be, like I wrote down, like, I want to be so slow to anger. I want to be kind. I want to be respectful. Like I wrote down a huge list about like how I wanted to be as a person too. And, after I did that work to realize where all my issues were, where all my problems were, I then started to research ways to heal myself that weren't talk therapy and getting on medications, because those things did not help me. I had done that for 10 years and nothing helped me. And so I found entheogenic plant medicine, and I started researching into it. So that would be my advice. Like the reason why I push that, like I encourage people to check that out, is because this is the stuff that exists for millennia, that has worked for Native Americans and a lot of countries and societies that are all over the world. It's the alternative way. It's not the alternative way. It's the original way of dealing with mental health issues, is to go into these medicine spaces and to like clear out toxins and issues. As an example, Native Americans use peyote, and they do sweat lodges, and their community wraps around them if they're having issues, and they go into the sweat lodge and they take peyote, and they have this what's considered a sacrament, and they go into this mental space, and they are able to process emotions out of their body. And so when I researched this and I learned about this, I'm like, I need that. I need to do whatever the Native Americans are doing, whatever the indigenous cultures and tribes are doing. I want to try that, because Western medicine is not working for me. And so if you're one of those people, you ask me, what advice I would give. If you're one of those people that after you've done your analysis about what you like and don't like about your life, if it includes things that are mentally related or body related, like if you've got injuries and issues and pains and diseases and things like that, it could actually all be stemming from mental health issues. So maybe take a look at, going towards entheogens and plant medicines, because those things heal. They really get to the root cause of issues. And that has been tried, tested, and done for millennia by indigenous cultures and tribes. So I would check that out.
I hear you. Interesting. Great perspective. What's it been like running the podcast? I was researching it. I was listening to a certain episode. I was surprised you're not like 100 times as big as you are, because they're like actually interesting, your interviews.
Oh my gosh, you're so sweet. Thank you. I just started it, and it was very much because I was working full time, and I had a lot going on. I just started it, and so I need to put more emphasis on it. Like I
Right.
need to actually like do it. I have like so many podcast episodes, like crazy amount, like probably 50 or more, just sitting on a hard drive that I haven't even posted yet. So I just need to do it. I was actually filming like 2 or 3 times a week for the last several months. So I'm ready to get them all out there. So maybe this will motivate me to start taking it more
I
seriously.
hope so. What's been the best one so far for you?
Sartane was pretty
It
good.
was.
But I also really liked, because I'm so into plant medicine right now and entheogens and just studying like other ways to heal body issues and deep rooted mental health issues. That's a huge, like, I love doing that work because it's helping so many people. There's a great episode called, sorry, that was with Dr. Martin Ball, and it's on 5-MeO DMT. So if you're at all curious, like, what is 5-MeO DMT? What is this bufo frog that she's talking about? It's known as the God molecule. And Dr. Martin Ball has written over 20 books on the topic. And he's so fascinating. And he gets down to like the science of like how it interacts with the body and the brain and everything. And so I think for me, that was probably one of my favorite episodes that I've done on my show. And then recently, I just did an episode with a woman, Megan Toey. It's called Wisdom Stripes. I think it's coming out in February 2025. And that was probably my favorite episode so far, going on someone else's show besides yours, of
Of
course.
course, of course.
Yeah, just because we got like into some really, really interesting topics. But yeah, I love doing this. It's my favorite thing to do. I'm going to do this full time.
Yeah, no, I love it. It's cool. What's the vision with it? What do you hope to achieve with the podcast?
So I actually started it out as a military transition show where I wanted to help service members transition and like, land on their feet and be surrounded by information from successful people who have done it, or people that focused on like mental health or, entrepreneurship, et cetera, where they could give them good advice. But after I went to the retreat that I went to in Austin, Texas with Illuminating Co., I realized that this needed to be so much more focused on like actually healing mental health issues. That if I really wanted to help service members and veterans and first responders, then what I would focus on is helping them to find the path to entheogens, because that would actually like get to the root cause of things. So my goal is to help create legal access to these things, more studies, more research. Right now, as one example, the VA just announced a 2-clinic study that they're going to do on the East Coast of the United States, where they're going to allow an MDMA study with veterans, which is huge because right now MDMA is illegal. You can't just go out on the street and buy mushrooms anywhere. Like there's only like 1 or 2 states that allow it in the United States. And so it's illegal. And so it's hard to access these things that I'm talking about. So it's not like, if there's someone listening now, they're probably like, well, where am I going to find mushrooms? Where am I going to find MDMA? Where am I going to find bufo frog poison medicine that I'm going to smoke, right? Like these are difficult things to find. And so part of my goal is to help create awareness about them and education about what they do, what they are, how long they've been around, how they've been used in indigenous cultures for millennia, so that we can start pressuring our governments to allow these things to be studied and provided in clinical settings. Instead of giving me addictive Ambien medication, can you please just give me 1 session of mushrooms that a facilitator watches me for a couple of hours? Like that's going to heal me. I don't need follow-up medications after that. So it's actually cheaper. It's safer. It's much more cost effective for the United States to put service members on these types of experiences and these journeys. And so that's my goal. I want to help create legal access, information, awareness, and help people find healing.
Cool. Closing. What would like be an ideal support system for veterans coming out of the military? if you could design it, what would it look like?
Yeah. Ooh, good question.
Thank you. Thank you.
So definitely helping a service member find a community after leaving. So almost like an alumni network, if you will, I think would be so powerful. They exist out there for sure, but you have to dig to find them, which kind of sucks. And there's also this like stigma, which I love all my service members. I love all my veterans. So for you listening at home, if you're one of these guys, I'm sorry, but I'm going to say it. When you leave the military, you don't want to be with like the old crusty guys wearing the veteran hat, you know. You just like that's not it's not cool. I don't know. And so there's a lot of people that struggle to find community because it's like you go down to like the Elks Lodge or whatever here in the United States. We've got elk lodges everywhere where like that's the community. And it's like, no, that's not the community. Like we want to be doing stuff like working out together, going on hikes, helping each other with business, right? There's all these different things that and aspirations that service members have once they leave the military. And so I want to help them find more community where they can get plugged in. They can be around like-minded individuals. They can look out for one another. They can support one another. That's important. And then the second thing for me would be helping them identify their purpose. So like when they leave, if they don't have a job lined up already, which a lot of them don't, helping them get plugged into the appropriate job for them. Because what happens right now is military service members will be like this badass senior level leader in the military doing something, and they'll leave the military and they'll end up having to take an entry level job at Walmart. And it's like, wait a second, their skills are transferable, right? They might not be loading M4s and walking around, a war zone or something, but like, hold on a second, like look at them holistically. They are leaders. They should be leading people. They are very well skilled in whatever it is. Maybe they're like a senior level aircraft mechanic or something, right? Like, let's get them to the right level of position around a very similar skill set if that's what they want and help them transition appropriately. Right now, we do not have an appropriate bridge of skills from military to civilian life, and that helps people fail. As an example, I'm a human resources professional with 18 years experience, yet when I left the military, me having a professional human resources certification on the civilian side wasn't a thing. And I'm like, well, hold on a second. I went to an in-person school for this, for 12 weeks and I was an honor graduate from that school and became an expert in UCMJ, Uniform Code of Military Justice, which is the legal system. I should be in a manager level position, at least in a human resources role, but I wasn't. I had to start at the bottom and go and pay out of my own pocket for certification on the civilian side, which is crazy. So just that transition, I think, is so important to help support getting certifications, the right level of job, the right level of pay, et cetera. Service members should not have to start over at an entry level $16 an hour job at Walmart when they leave the service. That makes people depressed, right? That they can't provide for their families. I don't think we do a great enough job on those two fronts. And I think those two things alone would be so helpful to helping people transition, just community, people around them, and giving them the right type of job.
Sure thing. What's
Yeah.
2025 going to be like for Amy?
Well, I'm going to be focusing hardcore on my podcast, especially
Cool.
after talking to you. But also, as I mentioned earlier in the show, I'm on the board of Illuminating Collective. And so we're trying to expand right now and do a lot more fundraising for veterans and first responders because we want to provide treatment for free. These programs aren't, cheap. They're cheaper than doing insurance route and, spending 5 years in therapy and on medications,
Sure.
but they cost a little bit of money. So we're fundraising and trying to help identify and select service members to send to these programs for free in a safe environment where they can get the help that they need. So that's going to be probably the majority of my 2025 is my podcast and helping serve military veterans and first responders.
I love it. Perfect. That's what I have for you.
Thank you so much for the time. Thanks for having me on.